Welcome to Zen Summer, where we talk about healthy living, mind, body, and spirit. So today we're going to be talking about decluttering our lives. This is something near and dear to my heart because it affects every aspect of our whole body wellness, our overall health, but it's also something that I've been working a lot on, decluttering the mess that is my RV, because we're getting ready to go do this trip where we're going to be traveling, internationally, and we are going to have to cut down to 2 suitcases a piece and a carry-on. So yeah, there's a lot of decluttering going on.
Whoa.
So I wanted to talk about like the health benefits of decluttering. Obviously having stuff around can be having stuff just lying around can be a physical health hazard. But like, how many times as a parent have you stepped on a Lego or like tripped on blocks or slipped on one of those little Matchbox cars?
It's innumerable, really. So many times.
So how do you get your kids to clear their clutter?
Well, I think first you start with asking them to clean up their mess. And there are often times that they'll ask for some help, but typically when they're older, as younger children, you should. You teach them exactly what to do, where to put the things, so they understand that the next time you ask them, that's what you want them to do. Because you can say, put your stuff away.
I love that you said teach them, because I think too many parents forget that these are tiny humans who may not know the skills yet to put their things away, to clean their room. We simply go, oh, go clean your room. And then when they don't, we yell at them. That's so unfair. So I love that you said you teach them, or you taught them first.
Well, yeah. Being a person with OCD, I like things in a very particular order. So helping them to understand what would help me, and then helping them in the process to learn where those things go, where I would be okay, helps me not stress about cleaning everything. It takes time, and consistency, but every time they get something out, my policy when my kids were young was to put it away when you were done with it. Now, I know that's not always the easiest thing to implement, because kids can kind of be all over the place. But I think it's important to stop when you realize it's happening and, hey, this is giving me anxiety because my space is too cluttered. I know that I have other hands to help. And it may not be that they do everything and you just stand and manage them. Maybe, as they get older, I think it should be more of that as opposed to helping them as much. But you have to kind of be involved in the process so that they understand that it's not something horrible to have to do. You just do it so that everybody gets to enjoy the space and be more at peace. And if it helps you, then you know that you'll be able to be a better parent to your kids because you're not mentally stressing about the way your space looks and it's giving you anxiety because of it. Because then you can displace that and take it out on anybody around you, really.
Well, I think it's good that you brought that up, because I don't think people realize that clutter not only is a health hazard. There are grown people health hazards that we create too, because all too often in my house, and I don't just mean my husband, because we have had people live with us, we've often provided, space for people to stay when they needed to. But all too often have they left things in inconvenient places. A knife gets left on the counter and you walk by and bump the knife, and the knife, I'm telling you, one time, it only happened one time, but a knife came in, it fell right off the counter and stuck into the floor right in front of my foot.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Zen's reaction to that was not so zen. I'm just saying.
Right.
But there's the I put something in a place that I thought for sure I'd remember where it was, and then it was not not where my brain went the next time. So
Right.
often we leave things in inconvenient places. We'll lose things because we do that, or we'll stub a toe on a tool because the tool didn't get picked up after use. So adults do it, I would almost say, often more than children sometimes, because children can get into
Right.
trouble, and adults, they just
Can do whatever they like.
well, yeah. So there's not a lot of, there are consequences
Accountability.
for your action, right? Not a lot of accountability, but there are consequences, because listen, when you leave a tool on the floor and then you stub your toe on it later, whose fault is that?
Right.
Now, if you leave a tool on the floor
Right.
and I stub my toe later, again, Zen might not be so Zen.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important to remember that it goes beyond the physical, that having all that clutter around can create anxiety, it can create stress, it can exacerbate depression.
Right. Yes, it absolutely can.
Now, I'm going to be real honest. I'm kind of a cluttered person.
Me
I
too.
well, I'm sure I'm more cluttered than you, because you just said you're a little OCD. I don't have that hindrance or that blessing. I'm not sure what we want to call that.
Well, it's a bit of both, I suppose.
I live in a small space. I'm a full-time RVer. I've mentioned that before on the show. And I'm also a little ADD. And so ADHD, ADD has that thing where sometimes if you put your things away, you again may thought you put it one place and didn't, and now you may never find it again. Which
Right.
I used to say, it's really amazing the things you can lose in a small RV as opposed to a house, but I can do it. But also, like, I like to have things. I have a bunch of notebooks that are in my room underneath my pillow, because then when I want to write something, I can grab the notebooks and go, oh, nope, not that notebook. Yep, this one. This is the one.
Yes, but that's a place to put something, and you remember where it is, and it helps you organize your space, even if it is a place that may be inconvenient or maybe unconventional to others.
Oh, I'm definitely unconventional. I like that word. I'm going to own that word.
Right?
I will say this, though, that I have recently been doing some, because while some of that, the notebooks, we'll just call that unconventional and not clutter. Some of this is just clutter. Okay. Like, some of it is just ridiculous. I have piles of stuff all over the place. And it gets to a point where once a pile is high enough, I'm only looking at the top of the pile. I don't know what's at the bottom.
Right.
So we had to put a new rolling AC in the bedroom because the roof AC decided it no longer wanted to function properly, and it was 102 degrees. So to do that, I needed to clean out a large pile of stuff where we could put the rolling AC.
Karma is funny that way, isn't it?
Isn't it? And as I'm doing this, I found two of my favorite sweaters that I had been looking for all winter and didn't know where they were, and thought,
well, at least you get to wear them this winter.
Well, I won't be here this winter with any luck. With any luck, we'll already be gone to Mexico by winter.
Oh, what a bummer. You don't even get to wear it.
But they're both like pullover sweaters, and in the evenings when it's cooled off, and I like my arms covered. Also, like, when you go to the hospital and it's 4 trillion degrees outside, but it's negative 4 trillion in the hospital, I like to have the sweaters.
For sure.
So they do come in handy. I just don't get to wear them as much as I would like to. I also found old pictures, like one of my oldest son, I'm not going to try and do that. My oldest son, who is over 30.
Okay, there you go.
And his uncle had professionally done when he was a year old. He might have been a year old. And it was sitting at the bottom of one of the notebook piles, because I have piles of notebooks. I love notebooks. And so I picked it up and I took a picture of it, and I put it in a file. So I will always have it, because again, we are cutting down to 2 suitcases.
Oh my gosh.
I can't carry all this stuff.
That's so crazy. Two
It's good,
suitcases is nothing.
but it's good. It's so good. Listen, I don't need even
You
a
are
whole
by yourself though, so
I
it's
don't
much
need a whole suitcase of clothes. I really don't.
right.
He definitely doesn't own enough for a suitcase full of clothes. So we'll put all the clothes into one suitcase. And then
Okay.
each of us will have a suitcase with well, his will be art supplies. I don't even know. I might not even need two suitcases. I might have some with books and kind of things in it that I don't want to let go of.
Right.
And then the carry-on is where all of the like the computers and because I'm not putting any of that in understorage.
Oh no,
That's going on
they'll
the plane.
totally destroy it.
Yeah. So, but that's it. That like really, this is so good for us. But and the decluttering is making me feel lighter. I
It
feel
is like a
lighter.
weight
I feel
when it
more
gets to be a certain
motivated.
point. Right. Because you have more space, both physically and mentally, because clutter can be a representation and often is of like psychological clutter, right? All this stuff in our mind that happens to us that we don't really look at too much, and it manifests in real life stuff. But the
Well,
thing I find most helpful when you feel overwhelmed by like how much stuff you have in a space is to just pick something or a corner. It could be like the smallest little corner, and you just start, going through that corner and let that be the one thing that you do in that period of time.
well, definitely baby steps, and I want to get to that in a second. But one other thing I wanted to mention about decluttering, because we've just talked about how it's physically good for you, how it's mentally good for you, but did you know it's also spiritually good for you?
Oh yeah.
Well, you know me, I'm the chakra chick.
Yeah.
Decluttering is so good for your chakras. I mean, I want to get into that more when I do a deep dive into the chakras, which I will eventually be doing. I would like for us to have some discussions about the chakras because I know it's something that you have found interesting in the past.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But getting rid of the clutter. So your root chakra is about safety and security. Getting rid of the clutter helps create a safe space for you. It helps clear that part of you that may not feel secure.
Mm-hmm.
So once you have that safer space, you're able to work more with the spiritual part of you that's in need of that security and safety. But if you don't have that safe space, you don't have a good foundation to work on.
Yeah, it has to start from the beginning, or
And
the bottom, like the ground.
yeah, and that's it. Your root chakra, that's the ground, your safety, your security, all of that. And that's how you can start doing that. It also helps the sacral chakra. It frees up your mind to enjoy life more, to be more creative. You know, it's very hard to be creative in a cluttered environment. I
Yes.
know, as my creative friend, you know this.
Yes. It's almost in my head before I plan to do a project. I typically have to create a space for the project. So I then end up decluttering to create space so that I can do or have room for what it is that I want to accomplish. Sometimes it could be a small space, but oftentimes it's not. So it leads me to a healthier habit because although I'm OCD, I'm still prone to like, little bits of clutter here and there. Like shoes aren't necessarily always in the right place. My kids' rooms are hard to keep clean because they like to pull everything out of the drawers all the time. But that's where, having them help me put things away where they know exactly where it belongs. They know where it goes. They know how to put it back because that's where they got it from. And if you make them do it every time like that, and then you also do it for yourself, it creates a habit that's actually really hard to break once you've created it.
I may be wrong, but isn't one or maybe even both of your children ADHD?
My oldest has ADHD and my youngest hasn't been tested yet.
So do you find that with your oldest, it is that, and I know he's a little older now, but do you find that it helps him even if you're just there, like maybe not physically helping?
Well, yes. Monitoring someone with ADHD while they're doing a task is pretty important only because they themselves have a very difficult time doing so on their own, even with medication sometimes. It's still this impulse driven consciousness,
Well, I
really.
have a friend, actually, an adult friend who has ADHD, and she finds it easier to get a task completed if someone is there with her, and they call it body doubling. And
Hmm,
so I wondered if that body doubling, just having your presence, and there are people who, by the way, get paid to simply sit like on a program like what we record on, like Zoom or whatever. They get paid to be body doubles for that, and you can find them on
really?
yeah, if you go look on Fiverr, or
Okay, I know what that is.
other places like Fiverr, you can find people who are getting paid to body double for people, because people with ADHD will get tasks done. Sometimes, not always, it helps to have a body double. Sometimes it's just
Hmm.
accountability, and Soul used to call it having an accountability buddy.
That's cute.
But I some people need that body doubling, so I wondered if maybe that helps with him a little bit.
Definitely. But I think it helps with most children because I think they call it something when they're kids, like mirroring, if I remember correctly. And that's how they learn. Like they just watch you and then they repeat it. So if they watch you and you're doing the tasks that you want them to do, like the having a buddy system or modeling, they eventually will copy you if you do it at a young age. Now, I don't know how difficult it is as they get older. I'm sure it's, much more experience driven and,
When I
case
was
by
a
case
kid,
basis, but
they didn't diagnose ADD or ADHD. I don't even know if we knew what that was when I was a child.
right.
We have to remember I'm 51, so it was a long time ago. Um, but I know that I was, and I always have struggled with. And my mom was a perfectionist. My mother, every place had a thing, everything had a place. The magazines were set certain ways on the coffee table,
Oh
and like,
yeah.
oh yeah. And I'm like, hi, there's my jacket. Hi, there's my other thing. Oh, let me throw this over there, and yep, I'll find those
Yeah.
things later. I am so not that organized person that she is. And I watched her. I knew she modeled these things for me. She taught me how to do them. It just didn't stick with me well. There are tips and tricks that I can't give you for teaching a child with ADHD, because, again, I was not taught those things, but I'm learning
Yeah.
them now, because it is so
Yeah,
much more talked about. There's so much more information out there. And so
for
some
sure.
of those things that work for children also work for me. Not a child, but it does work for me. So,
Like those fidget spinners, those have been incredibly helpful for my oldest. I've spoken to his teachers at school and they allow him to have it in class when, they're not doing instruction or working on projects together. If they're just have some downtime or some quiet time, he's allowed to use it. And it's helped a lot with because he likes to move around when,
mm,
he's having his moment and they allow him to have some freedom with it. But
the
it's
little
because I've
puppet, I
had
like the
candid
little puppet fidget
conversations.
things they have now. I think those would be great for him.
Oh yeah, he has like a couple of them. He has something like the fidget spinners and he has like Rubik's cubes and little puzzles that you can do and take with you, and they're small and they don't take up a lot of space. It's
I think it's
been
great that it's being more recognized now. And I didn't want to have a whole conversation about ADHD because I don't really know enough about it. But I do know that it affects everything. And it certainly affects being able to clean and declutter your life. And decluttering isn't just about cleaning. I
right.
mean, yes, let's pick up the mess at the end of my bed. We're not even going to talk about that. But and that's clutter for sure. But it's also things like, we did a show a couple weeks ago, Soul and I, about organizing your pantry. organizing that pantry is decluttering.
Mhm.
So some of the ways, and you were talking about, baby steps, some of the ways that we can start with decluttering: pick a drawer, any drawer. I know you said pick a corner, but I'm going to go even smaller. Pick a drawer,
Okay.
any drawer. And we all have that junk drawer. And P.S., that might not be the best place to start because junk drawers can be a little scary. But
Right.
take the
Depends
drawer
on your
out.
junk drawer, I suppose.
Yeah, oh my, you should. I definitely have had more than one junk drawer and probably currently have more than one junk drawer.
Me too.
But pick a drawer, any drawer, and organize it. Or organize the whole set of drawers, like maybe it's your kitchen drawers. Organize the cupboard or the cabinet above the sink, or maybe it's the whole set of cabinets. Listen, you're not, but I am a spoonie, which means, and I think you know the spoons theory that I've told you about, but I don't have a lot of energy every day. And every day, everything I do takes some energy because I have chronic illness. So
Right.
I have to pick and choose what I'm doing, and I have to maybe baby step, sometimes even a little more than most people. So if you were, and this is the thing we all hate doing, except I'm loving it because most of my stuff is like not going with me. So, but if you were getting ready to move, what would you start with?
Areas that I didn't use all that often. Maybe even only put it there once and haven't like looked at it. Those would
So
be the
why?
areas that I would, well, because in my day-to-day life, I know what areas are very useful and very functional. And typically it's the bathroom, the kitchen, and then maybe like a video game system or, a few games left behind to like play every now and then. I mean, you don't really need them anymore with tablets and TVs and stuff, but I still like to play them with the kids. And they really enjoy it too. But I would start with areas that you don't see very often, like your junk drawer or maybe a side table that you kind of just stick stuff in that's convenient because it's out of the way and it doesn't clutter the surface of the table. But then, the drawer obviously has its own journey.
So I think I know. I
Like
think
the
I
closet up on
understand.
top.
I think I understand why you want to start with an area you may not have seen in a while, but do you know why you would start there?
Well, because it doesn't get in the way of my normal day-to-day activities too much that it would be such an inconvenience and a hassle and a stress for me. Because the point of packing before you move is to remove the anxiety that comes with not being prepared for something.
So for me, and it's funny because I would also start with places I don't look so often, if I can get to them. That's a whole other story.
Well, that's its own journey too.
Yes, it might be, but would be because I feel like it's, first of all, it's more fun for my brain because I might find things like that picture of my spiritual brother holding my little boy, who by the way is in
Yeah.
his 30s now, and again, this was like when he was 1, so this is a very old picture. And
Right.
so that's kind of fun for your brain to find things you haven't seen in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's also easier for me to go, I haven't seen this in 6 months, I obviously don't need it, and I can
Right.
either put it in a pile for donation, a pile for giving away, because I am giving a lot of stuff to friends and family, or I can put it in a pile to throw away. And I would say a pile for yard sale if you have that kind of energy. Yard sales are a whole nother ball of wax for me.
I wish I had a yard to have a sale.
I don't have the kind of energy it takes to do a yard sale.
I don't know if I do either, to be honest. It's pretty difficult living, working, kids. I help my mom, sometimes with things in reference to taking care of the house and such, but it's rough. Sometimes it's very exhausting. I can't imagine what it's like having to do all of that and then also be sick.
Yeah. Well, and it's all very exhausting, but I also decided a long time ago that I wasn't going to let my illness stop me, and then often I'd let it stop me. recently when I really just, and we've talked about this on the show too, I didn't think I was going to make it. I didn't think I was going to be here for much longer. I didn't think certainly by the end of this year I was going to be here. And when they did enough to make me start feeling better, to make me start feeling maybe I did have some future coming, I decided I wasn't going to let it stop me anymore. However, I am not stupid about it, and I'm not going to go try and have a yard sale, because that would just, I probably wouldn't make it past the yard sale.
Don't do it. It's not a good idea.
The last thing I want to touch on real quick is decluttering the mind. Because while
Okay.
decluttering our stuff is really good for the mind, we still have too many thoughts. We still have too much that well, certainly someone like me, I'll lay down at night and my brain just starts whirling around like crazy.
Right.
I say my muse likes to wake me up at 3 a.m. Often she just doesn't let me go to sleep, because she likes to come and visit me at midnight and then goes, okay, come on, get up. You're going to write now. Come on, get up. Yeah. She, I don't know why my muse is 3 years old, but you know.
Right. Right.
So some of the things that we can do to declutter our mind, and we have talked about them and will talk about them some more. Certainly, I mean, Sol and I talked about them. You and I will be talking more about them. Meditation. Meditation is so good for you. And I know people say they struggle with it. And I struggled with it for a long time, but there are so many different ways to meditate. Even, and we're going to talk about this too, but even the martial arts that you do is a form of meditation and can be used as a form of meditation.
For sure.
And then there's self-care. I just want to let that word sit there for a minute. Self-care. And I know that most of you, and you are just as guilty, do not do enough of this.
Yes, I know.
And so when we give ourselves self-care, when we take care of our needs, we can lighten the load of our brain and allow ourselves a little less clutter in our mind.
Yeah, you have to. Otherwise, I find that when I do not, and it's not necessarily that meditation has to be this like serious, I need to sit down in a certain type of clothes and be in a certain pose and have like I mean, all of that is really nice for sure, but you don't have to do that to be able to get into a mindset that is peaceful and relaxing, or at least try to do so. You can just sit there in your chair and just close your eyes and see what comes to your mind, and then practice letting those thoughts drift away from you so that you can make room for new things.
And it's not easy to do. I was told by someone with ADHD that it's almost impossible to do, but I beg to differ, because my youngest son has always had ADHD. He was undiagnosed because we didn't want to put him on meds, but he's always been ADHD. You know him. You know I'm right. And we taught him from a very young age how to meditate and put those energies somewhere so that he could focus himself a little more without that struggle. So it is possible.
It's actually, well, it's proven to be very helpful for children. Specifically children who are prone to violent outbursts or like problematic behavior, because it forces you to stop and discipline your body to be still. And then further yet, you have to then push past your body and your surroundings to your inner world. And it takes practice and it takes time, but once you get good at knowing yourself, it's much easier to navigate in a world that is constantly grasping for your attention.
And then the final thing that I will put in for decluttering your mind is setting boundaries around technology. Setting boundaries, period, but setting boundaries around technology. It is how much television. Oh, I'm so guilty of this. How much television do you allow yourself to watch? I'm a binge watcher.
No.
So
Me too. Guilty.
Do you sit and scroll through? And I'm guilty of this too. Do you sit and scroll through TikTok all day?
See, Tracy, is this what you're doing today?
This is. Let me hold the mirror up of myself today.
Ah,
How do you sit? Do you sit and scroll through TikTok for hours on end? Did you clutter your mind up? Now I'm doing that right now for a reason, but there's been days when I've just.
there's not always a reason.
There's not always a reason. How much time are you spending on social media? I know that some people just don't like social media at all, and other
I
people
don't do
love
social
it a
media
lot.
currently,
I know.
other than, this platform.
That being said, social media has its uses. I have always kept a Facebook because I keep in touch with my high school friends, my
Yeah.
elementary friends that way. And we all grew up in a very small, the town I grew up in had less than
Right.
1,000 people. Okay.
So tiny.
Yeah, very small. So we all keep in touch that way. And we have for a number of years now, which is why I still keep it. Do I go? I used to go on it way too much. I don't go on it every day now. I'll go on it and take a look at a couple of things, and then I move on with my day, probably on TikTok, to be honest. But that's a whole other story.
It's funny.
So setting some boundaries around your technology is really helpful in decluttering the mind. And what you put in is what's going to come out. So
Right.
whatever you're putting into your mind, that's what's going to rattle around in there and eventually fall out of your mouth. Just keep that in mind.
Which is why while you're scrolling, you have to be careful about what you choose to watch.
Yes. Yes.
Because some of us cannot help it, and I understand, but the subject matter is really important because I find a lot of this content isn't necessarily helping you grow mentally or really trying to help you intellectually understand a theory or a concept. And if it is, oftentimes it's not this thing that goes viral or is all that, popular. So it's an interesting commentary on society at large, in my opinion, because of that fact.
I hate to stop us because this is a very good conversation and one I hope that we'll have more than once, but we are over what we normally do. We do need to wrap this up here, and we will get together again next week. And I don't remember what we're going to be talking about, but I promise we will be entertaining. If you'd like to show support for Zen Summer, the hosts, and the information that we're sharing, you can visit us on ko-fi.com/Zen Summer. That's ko-fi.com/Zen Summer. And until next time, we wish for all of you, if not a Zen summer, then at least a Zen moment or two.